Thank you. I am deeply, deeply honored to be among all of you this afternoon. You know, you're here because you care deeply about diversity and inclusion and equality, and because your companies do. And so we're just consider it, you know, we are among friends. And so, you know, Salesforce is very, very grateful for this opportunity to address you today. And I would say we're proud of the recognition we've achieved, but we are humbled by it. You know, we're part of the tech industry, and like many industries, the tech industry, you just have to observe, it has a lot of work to do. So make no mistake, nobody's confused. There's a lot of work to do in the tech industry. We're part of that industry. There's a lot of work ahead, and we're up to the task. And we're focused on continuing to drive forward and make a difference in diversity and inclusion, and making all these great workplaces that are represented on those lists that you have seen, making those even greater workplaces. So I'd like to start with just a very, very brief overview, a retrospective on Salesforce, on the year behind, and then just explore what's ahead with Salesforce in the journey to driving to equality for all.
Every once in a while, a group of people find each other and create something bigger than themselves. Values align, purpose aligns, and they all blaze a trail together. We are all trailblazers, and thanks to you, we've had our best year ever.
All right, we have some breaking news now on Salesforce.
About a new strategic partnership.
Salesforce is partnering with IBM in artificial intelligence.
We have a phenomenal relationship with Amazon, with Dell. Salesforce forming a cloud computing partnership with Google.
It was a year of unprecedented change.
We have an amazing amount of innovation.
It's the fourth industrial revolution. We're in a new world. We have to empower and enable all of you with all these amazing next generation technologies.
Trailhead is the key to your future. It's the way that you learn the Salesforce ecosystem.
A year of new highs.
Salesforce Tower is our tallest building ever.
We are now the fastest growing top 5 enterprise software company in the world.
The expansion of Salesforce cements our position as a global leader.
It was a year of inspiration.
A trailblazer is empowered.
Moms, women, men, anybody can accomplish anything.
Google is a trailblazer.
Girl Scouts is a trailblazer.
Brunello Cucinelli è un apripista.
You are the innovators. You are the disruptors. You are the shapers. You're shaping this future.
A year of family reunions.
Dreamforce, it's the world's largest software conference.
Whether it's the community, our customers, our employees, everyone is our family.
It's really cool to see everyone so excited about a tech company.
A year of doing well and doing good.
Business is the greatest platform for change. Now what can we do to make the world better?
The future is all of us.
We stand with everyone fighting for equality.
And as we each find our voice, we give others the power to do the same.
You define who you are, what you believe in, and what you go for.
Thank you for driving us.
All of our customers, all of our partners, all of our stakeholders, thank you.
Thank you for inspiring us.
We didn't do it alone. We did it together.
And as always, thank you for making us who we are today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you on behalf of Salesforce. On behalf of our entire Ohana, you're going to hear that word a time or two more in these brief remarks. And Ohana is the word that we use to describe our culture. And it means extended family in the Hawaiian native language. And so we think about our culture as an extended family. That includes our customers and our partners and our employees and their families and the community at large. And so here we are together at the dawn of the fourth industrial revolution. And each of us, each of our companies, each of us as individuals have an essential role. There's no opting out. This is it. This is the ride that we're all on together, this fourth industrial revolution. And you think about the former three industrial revolutions, and Salesforce was a company founded in the third industrial revolution, and the huge, huge seismic changes that it made for society. Literally every time one of these changes happened, it literally changed everything. The first industrial revolution. Humankind finally discovered and unleashed the real power of fire through steam, through the internal combustion engine, and it changed everything. Formerly, it was the power of human muscles and the power of animals and the power of moving water, and on the seas it was the power of wind, and that was how anything was accomplished and how GDP was generated and how human activity happened. And then through fire, it was the steam engine. And then later, the internal combustion engine, it changed everything from transportation all the way through every aspect, including transforming the agrarian society, then the second industrial revolution, right? Through humankind understanding that those invisible powers of electricity and magnetism, that now the ability to sit in this room with air conditioning and ride up and down on the escalators and have electric lights, there wouldn't be urbanization without that second industrial revolution. And then the third one, and this is the one that spawned many of the careers in this room and certainly was the genesis behind Salesforce, this third industrial revolution, the power of the transistor, the power of Moore's law, the power of software, all combining, and it literally, the devices you're holding in your hands, the ways that you interact with people around the world in milliseconds, all empowered by that third industrial revolution. But buckle up, because this next one is going to be even bigger than the former ones. And we cannot even imagine yet today the implications that machine learning and artificial intelligence and natural language processing and the Internet of Things and robotics are going to have. I have a 7-year-old, and I'm almost certain the job that my 7-year-old ultimately gets doesn't even exist today. Does not exist today. The world is going to be transformed in the next decade, and certainly over the next generation. So the question that all of us should be asking ourselves is, who's going to be left behind in that transformation? Is this transformation, this fourth industrial revolution, is going to make the world more equal, or is it going to make the world less equal? And the people who are most at risk in this transformation, you can see it yet happening. You can see it happening over the last decade, 2 or 3, are often people, young women, girls, people of color. We naturally want to create opportunities for everyone. We want to make sure that the people who are most often marginalized in our society are not left behind. And so the most brilliant minds on the planet, the really brilliant ones, that is the question they're pondering. One great example, I had the privilege of being at Grace Hopper this year and just there to listen and learn and participate as an ally, and you'll hear that word again, ally, and listening to Melinda Gates, her remarks, her keynote remarks, and I'll just give them to you verbatim. You often hear the big challenge is teaching machines to think and behave more like humans. But I can't help but think we should be more specific. We don't want to teach computers racism or sexism or selfishness or greed. We want to teach computers the very best of what humanity has to offer. And for that to happen, we need the people building AI to represent not just one small slice of human experience, but all genders, all ethnicities. I would add all sexual orientations, all religions, all nationalities, all forms of abilities. All of those things need to be the people that are building this the machines and the platform for this fourth industrial revolution. And it truly is a platform, and we look at some of the platforms that have been built over the last decade or two, and the challenge is, if you don't take this mindset and you let nature take its course, and you build a platform and you just declare the platform, it's agnostic, right? The platform's agnostic, and we've seen, recently we've seen what happens when an agnostic platform can be misused or can be weaponized. I think we need to be thoughtful as we move into this next stage of society to make sure that the ways that we're building platforms, we're doing it in a responsible way, and those that are the architects and creators of those platforms are thoughtful about the impacts that those platforms will have on society. And I think many of you know I'm relatively new to Salesforce. I've been there less than 18 months, so I can still talk about it a little bit like an outsider, a little bit with a beginner's mind. And one of the beautiful things about Salesforce was founded on these 3 amazing vectors of innovation. This idea of this technology model, 1999. The company yesterday was 19 years old, 19th birthday of Salesforce yesterday. 19 years ago, the idea that the cloud is the future of how enterprise software is going to be delivered, right? Sounds super obvious today. Not 19 years ago, didn't sound so obvious. And the business model, the notion of instead of selling software with a perpetual license, selling software through a subscription. So business model innovation, technology model innovation. But the most lasting innovation really is the societal model. And this notion that the company was founded on, that we have a responsibility. First of all, the preface is, there's no pretense that we have all the answers. You know, Salesforce is a company, it's a human endeavor, people are involved, we're fallible. So that's a foundational point. But we have a North Star in a sense that we have a responsibility to make a difference in the world. And naturally, we want to create great, great returns for all of our shareholders. But we're interested ultimately, and we think the best shareholder returns come when you're thinking about all of your stakeholders, your employees and their families and your partners and your customers and the communities in which you live and the schools that serve those communities, and ultimately even the environment and the planet is a stakeholder. That's why we're driving to drive carbon out of the services and solutions that we deliver to all. And so the notion that we have this responsibility, we think that all well-managed companies, contemporary companies, as we move into this fourth industrial revolution, will come back to this centering principle that if you have a platform, you have a role, you have a responsibility to think about that platform's impact largely on society. And so for us, we have a view that the organization has a higher purpose. And that higher purpose is to drive towards an age of equality. We're not there yet, but I'll share with you some of the progress along the way in society at large and a few of the things that we're doing at Salesforce. And that drive for us has 4 lanes in it. First is equal opportunity, making sure that nobody is left behind in this journey into the fourth industrial revolution. Equal rights for every race and sexual orientation and gender identity and difference in ability and nationality and religion. Equal pay for equal work, and equal access to great public education for everyone on the planet in every country in the world, and particularly, as I highlighted earlier, for those folks that are most likely to be marginalized and left behind. So equal rights. This is one of the defining stories of the company. And this predates me. I had nothing to do with it. So Indiana, standing for the rights of we saw legislation, the company saw legislation that the company viewed as discriminatory, that was going to affect our employees and their families and our partners and our customers in Indiana. And the company took a stand, not alone, but was on the vanguard, taking a stand. Now, at that time, I was outside the company, looking in. And just looking at that and looking at the leadership of the company at large, of our co-founder and chairman and CEO, Mark Benioff, and just going, wow, what a company. And thinking about those doors that the company was opening. Because I have a son who is LGBTQ, and just thinking that those doors that Salesforce is opening, they're literally opening those doors for my son. And the notion, not alone, many other companies and institutions, following the lead in Indiana, in North Carolina, in Georgia, in Texas, taking a lead to stand and share their voice and share their platform for those that don't have that same platform, that don't have that same voice, speaking for those that don't necessarily get that sort of mind share. And it was an incredible thing, and it was an inspiring thing for me, and it's something that we continue to do, and I'm going to share some of the other dimensions where now it is a responsibility. None of us are going to be equal until all of us are equal. And so if you stand for LGBTQ equality, then you need to stand for racial equality. If you stand for racial equality, then you need to stand for equal pay. If you stand for equal pay, then you need to stand for fair immigration for people regardless of their religion or their national origin. You cannot selectively pick and choose equality on this dimension, but not another dimension. Equal pay. Another defining story, incredible story in the company, again, predated me. I had nothing to do with this. And like all great stories, there's 2 amazing heroes in the story. And if we're talking about Salesforce, you might imagine, well, the heroes, of course, that's Mark Benioff, Parker Harris, the co-founders. It's not. The heroes are Cindy Robbins. She leads employee success. That's our version of HR. And Layla Seca. She leads the App Exchange. And they came to Mark almost 3 years ago and said, hey, Mark, we think there's a problem in the company. We think that women are paid less than men. And Mark was skeptical and said, go get the facts. And they went on an exhaustive survey around the world, and they surveyed every employee on the planet for parity and equity based on gender, and found, in fact, indeed, there was a gap. And that gap was $3 million, and we invested $3 million in 2016 to make that gap whole. We repeated the process, culminating in 2017, about a month, hence 11 months later, former, right, and invested another $3 million. This time in the US, we didn't just look at gender, we also looked at race and ethnicity, so that we could plant a flag and say, equal pay for equal work. So super, super important. The other concept that we're now driving super hard inside the organization is this notion of being an ally. And the first thing I want to underline about the idea of being an ally is it doesn't mean that you agree on everything. So you can be somebody's ally, because we think about this ohana, it's like a family. And in any family, if your family is anything like mine, everyone doesn't agree on everything all the time, right? But you're there for your siblings and the other members of your family, your sisters and brothers in the family, you're there for them, whether or not you agree on every particular issue, every particular notion of legislation, every particular social issue. You don't necessarily have to agree. As a family, you're there to support the other members of your family as allies. So this is a lesson that was imprinted on me by my son. And my son, about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, he went off to college. And kind of early days, I went with him, and he gave me this button right here. And it just says simply on it, ally. And actually, the actual button, I've kind of whited it out, has the name of the college that he goes to on it. And I carry this with me. Wherever I go around the world, I've got this button with me. And he's like, hey, put this on. And there's something powerful about publicly declaring yourself to be an ally. It's different than secretly in your mind saying, oh, I'm that person's ally, or I'm allied with this cause, but then there's controversy and there's a cost comes with being an ally. And it's easy to step away and kind of distance yourself from those alliances. But making that public declaration gives you a sense of accountability and gives the person to whom or the group to whom you've declared that alliance, a sense of empowerment and trust and faith that they can lean in a little bit more and be a little bit more courageous as they're facing whatever challenge it is, and the notion that you will lend your platform to them, if necessary. And inside the company, we have many, many amazing examples of allies. And one of the best is our co-founder and CEO, Mark Benioff. So this picture was taken at the Women's March in 2017, and I had a chance to attend as an ally for my wife and my youngest son, who's 7, and teaching him at an early age what it means to be an ally. And so we're there at the Women's March, and you can see hundreds of thousands of people there. In the midst of this, it just kind of starts pouring down rain, and I'm watching social media, looking at my smartphone enabled by this third industrial revolution, and saying, hey, there's Mark. There's Mark, he's somewhere, it looks like he's in the middle of Market Street somewhere. And then you look at that sign, and you can tell the Salesforce marketing department did not make that sign. Okay? The fonts are all wrong. There's no blue cloud. And why is that important? This is Citizen Mark. This is not CEO Mark. This is Citizen Mark showing up because the Women's March is all about empowering women and girls, equality for women and girls all around the planet. So the sign's not perfect, and I know Mark's got 2 young daughters, and I have a theory about who helped to make that sign, but I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to speculate on, he might have had some help with that sign, but the messaging's right. Equal pay for equal work, equality for all. A role model, a great role model for many of us, for me, and we have many great role models. I mentioned Cindy and Layla as other ones, inside of Salesforce in terms of this drive to equality. So one of the things that we've done is try to now codify what we mean by being an ally, be more systematic. And again, it doesn't mean that you necessarily agree on every issue just because you declare yourself to be somebody's ally. Because the last thing we want to do is to create a sort of an echo chamber. We want to make sure that we are receptive to and open to people of all variety of viewpoints without wavering from our core values. So that's a delicate balance that many companies are working through today, right? So it doesn't mean you necessarily agree on every issue. But it's a notion of asking. Just simply asking others about their journey. If there's, 1,000 people in this room, you could look at someone and presume, well, they look like maybe they're a member of the majority. They probably don't have that interesting of a personal journey. I can guarantee if there's 1,000 people, there's 1,000 amazing stories if you just take the time, and particularly seek out those from a different walk of life than your own. Listening to theirs, being willing to share your own, and then as you learn to build empathy and a vocabulary, begin to show up and begin to speak up. Share your platform with them. The foci around which we're working to drive these alliances in the company are So first of all, who in the audience, your company has employee resource groups or ERGs? Raise your hand. Okay, I'm going to guess that's about 25% or less, right? So our employee resource groups, we call them Ohana groups, consistent with our culture. And these are our Ohana groups. So we have 10, and they're spelled out kind of explicitly what they are. And so, for example, Bold Force is the Black Organization for Leadership Development, and that's for empowering, and it's for the people that self-identify as Black at Salesforce and their allies. You don't have to be Black to be in Bold Force. And so one of the early decisions that we took when I joined the company, the entire leadership team, was to double down on the ERGs, to double down on our Ohana groups, and to make sure that each of them had a strong executive sponsor, voluntary. And so we just cast the call, cast the net out, and see who was willing to stand up at the top levels of the company to be the executive sponsors. And again, the executive sponsors for Bold Force didn't necessarily have to be Black. The executive sponsors for the Women's Network didn't necessarily have to identify as women. Also, to make sure they had great budgets, to make sure that it was a friction-free and a fun process, to make sure that they each were aligned with a really remarkable and impactful nonprofit, and to make these Ohana groups great. And for me, as I came in and I observed, because I've heard so much about the culture of Salesforce, this Ohana culture, and you ponder and ask that question, where do you keep the culture? Where is that? And as my observation and my theory is, these groups, these are the vessel. These are the vessels where the culture of the company is stored. So we're working super hard to empower them and to expand them thoughtfully. So late last year, we added the 10th Ohana group. That's in the lower right. That's Faith Force. And this sprung out of some exploration and just listening, and people of faith in the workplace asking, well, if my faith is a part of my identity, is that part of my identity that I need to check at the door, or is that something that it can be part of my authentic self at work? So this is an interfaith organization. It happened to be founded by a Christian person and an Islamic person, and found common ground in a way that's respectful to all religions, and also respectful to people that have no religion at all. Drive awareness and empathy and shared understanding in a way for everyone to feel like they can bring their full authentic self to work. So we work hard every day to make sure each of these Ohana groups is empowered, and we're expanding them around the world. For example, 3 weeks ago, I had a chance to be in Hyderabad. And in Hyderabad, we launched Outforce. And Outforce is our Ohana group for the LGBTQ community, people that identify as LGBTQ, and their allies. So we launched Outforce in India, launched it in Hyderabad. And I think you may know, or you should know, right, that if you identify as LGBTQ in India, you don't have all the same protections that are rightfully yours, that you are owed, that you are deserved as a human. You don't have those protections in India, in many cultures, obviously, around the world. And so showing up at Pride here is more of a challenge. This is the first time we've done it as a company, but it was part of this launch of Outforce in India. And it was remarkable and amazing. And before we came, literally in our office, no one was out. No one was out. And through this process, someone came out. And so just one. In my view, that's kind of that first drop of rain, that someone was courageous enough to do that. And so you say, was this a successful trip? Yes. One person felt zero. It's binary. That's an infinite increase in the number of people in the office that were out. Infinity, right? The denominator was zero. And so, and the tears just flowed. The tears just flowed. So amazing, remarkable. And we're trying to make sure that we're standing and being allies for every aspect of our community and things that are core to how they identify. So a couple weeks ago, if you live in San Francisco, you can't have missed the Lunar New Year Parade. And we were there for the first time. Salesforce showed up, Lunar New Year Parade, for people who part of their identity is the celebration of the Lunar New Year. And big deal? Yeah, for them it is. For them it is. And the pride that they felt of being part of this celebration as Salesforce, and the idea that Salesforce is acknowledging it, was a big deal for them. In January, the MLK Walk. And the folks you see in this picture, they're the leader of Bold Force, the Black Organization for Leadership Development. They're the leaders with an exception, right? You see right there, the blue Salesforce hat in the back? That person's name is Charlie Isaacs. And Charlie does not identify as black. But he is the consummate, he's the epitome of an ally. It doesn't matter which intersection it is. Charlie is there. Now, I'm not sure if Charlie was supposed to be in the picture, or Charlie's just like photobombing the picture, or he just wasn't tall enough to be, because this is Bree and Allie are there. They're the kind of two of the leaders, you know. But there's Charlie. And one of the remarkable things is, a year ago, only 100 people showed up. But we're trying to encourage people to be an ally. And when 100 people showed up, most of them black. Nearly all of them black. This year, over 1,000 people showed up. 1,000 people, Salesforce. And the black t-shirts and, you know, it was inspiring, remarkable. I had a chance to bring my father, who's 87 years old. He was, you know, some small part of this. I marched with my son, and it just was, for me, changed my perspective on the world and made me even more hopeful. You know, imagine, you know, like I do, you show up for work black, and it's January 16th, the day after. It didn't necessarily change the numbers of the representation, but you see, well, you were there, and you were there, you're my ally. It doesn't mean you agree on every single thing with me, but you're willing to stand beside me as my colleague and sponsor, friend, mentor, ally, sibling. It changes your perspective when someone shows up as an ally. Again, doesn't mean you agree on every single thing. But this was an important celebration commemorating that march in 1965 from Selma to Montgomery, and an important milestone in that long journey for equality for the blacks in this country. So I want to just take a brief moment to kind of reflect on where we are in that journey.
This is a seminal Civil Rights 2.0, what are you doing every single day moment. This is it.
There is a lot of responsibility with that word activism, whether you have a voice or not. Either you talk about it or you be about it and you do about it.
I don't care how you fight until your voice is heard. You have a voice. If you did not have a voice, you wouldn't be here.
When we see something that is not right, not fair, not just, we have a moral obligation to speak up and speak out and do something about it.
We stand against the hatred. We stand against the violence. Even in the darkest hour, we saw the healing power of love to light a path forward to an age of equality.
We made a decision to march in an orderly fashion from Selma to Montgomery. But last year, I had the honor to go back to Selma, and it was my honor to introduce President Barack Obama. So when people tell me nothing has changed, I feel like saying, come and walk in my shoes, and I will show you change.
Lots of progress, lots of work, lots of work. You know, earlier I highlighted one of the early decisions in the kind of pieces of advice I got from Mark Benioff, you know, our CEO, of was kind of doubling down on the AHANA groups. And it kind of came from one of these early one-on-ones I had with Mark about the first 30 days with the company. And you know, this amazing opportunity for me, kind of late in my career, to work for this legendary entrepreneur, this incredible human being and role model, and to learn from him. So I'm going to this early one-on-one, and I'm thinking I'm gonna get this amazing kind of Jedi-like wisdom, like, you know, use the Force, right? And Mark tells me, he said, how are we gonna do this? He says, use the platform. Use the platform. Don't invent new means. The Salesforce has built this amazing business in 19 years through the power of the platform. Just simply harness the power of the platform. I think if you know Salesforce or you live in San Francisco, you know that a core and central part of our platform is Dreamforce. And so some of the outtakes that you saw, many of them are from Dreamforce. And so Dreamforce is kind of this 4-day, more or less, event. And one of the 4 days is dedicated to having an equality summit on the big stage and the big venues of Moscone and all the digital assets and promotion and digital streaming around the world. Incredible. And you know, to put together this kind of lineup, starting with the amazing, incredible, you know, Melody Hobson, you know, her incredible personal story from a single mother on the south side of Chicago, earning her way into Princeton, becoming the president of Ariel Investments. And if you haven't seen her TED Talk, search it out. It's amazing. And the notion of being color brave and having color brave, not colorblind conversations. Obviously, the super recognizable Taraji P. Henson from Hidden Figures. It's a little TV show called Empire. And these incredible leaders, Janet Foudy, CEO of Digital, Bozome St. John, Sally Krawcheck, right? So this amazing portfolio of folks, DeRay McKesson, Lorene Powell Jobs, will.i.am you saw, Natalie Portman talking about equal pay. And the notion that this Academy Award winning actress being in a movie with a co-star, equal billing, getting paid a third of what the co-star did. That's not equal pay for equal work. So it's really using our platform to share these stories to advance the cause of equality for all. And obviously not just for our 30,000 employees. I think in the video you saw, I hope you saw this idea of trailblazers, this broader community of which there's millions. It's really for the benefit of and these are, when we say trailblazers, this is our epitome of trailblazers. These three people, Stephanie Herrera, Shona Hughes, Raby De La Paz, and they just happen to be sitting together at this moment. And I think they're watching Taraji P. Henson on stage, and wow, I saw this photo and literally just almost brought tears to my eyes, right? This is what it's about in terms of how do 30,000 people inspire 1 million people? It's through using the platform. If you've been close to Salesforce, I think you know, or around, you know that another essential part of our platform is Trailhead. So literally right now, you can take out your smartphone, your third industrial revolution device, and type in trailhead.com/equality, and it should resolve to the curricula open source. Because part of what we're doing is not necessarily to create some kind of proprietary advantage in this drive to equality, but contribute these kind of ideas, open source, free. You can take these modules and learn. One of the most recent ones is a module on inclusive hiring. And again, for all of our core business processes, we're trying to go away from things that are not systematic and codify. What is the one right way to drive equality in the business? What is the one way to be hired in the company? There should only be one. And that starts with one first principle. You always hire the most qualified candidate. But having said that, it should be done from a slate that's diverse. And I'm confident, we're confident that over time, if you're hiring the most qualified candidate from a diverse slate, a slate that looks like the community, the company will look like the community. And we've made some progress, but we're not celebrating at all. But we have made some progress. So an important part of being a leader, aspiring to be a leader, is transparency. So every year we release our numbers. We did just in December, right? And these are the representation numbers for the company. In terms of women, we have 30.9%. That's up from 30.1%. So 0.8 of a point improvement year over year. And literally, you can just go to salesforce.com/equality. Boom, it's out there, right? So you can take a screenshot, but it's there. It's in the public domain. And in addition, in June of last year, we actually started releasing a double click down, which is our EEO1 data, which is a little bit more detail. But back to the numbers. So that's 0.8 of a point. But what that means, because we're growing at scale, that means 2,000 more women work for Salesforce today than did last year. We made progress on underrepresented minorities in the US, 0.3 of a point, from 9.15 to 9.45. What that means is 350 more underrepresented minorities. That's a whole small tech company work for Salesforce today than did a year ago. That's the beginnings of making progress. But it's critical that we continue to drive visibility to the data, because any well-managed company is driven on data. And it's driven based on accountability among the leaders. So we've instituted a process where every top leader who reports to Mark that has more than 500 people every month gets a scorecard. The scorecard is, for example, how many women work for you this month? How many worked for you last month? How many women did you hire? How many women left the company for whatever reason? How many women did you promote every month? In the US, how many underrepresented minorities or people of color, et cetera, same dimensions. And for VPs in the executive, because it's not just about bringing people in the company, it's making sure that they're represented throughout the entire pyramid of the company. How many women VPs do you have? Same litany. How many did you hire? How many left? How many did you promote? And it's amazing the power of data. People ask us about incentives, and there's no targets, there's no quotas. The data is the incentive. And when people see these data, either you're proud of them, it represents your leadership, or you're not. It's powerful. So I'd encourage everyone, you're thinking about ways to change behavior, transparency, data, executive visibility, and accountability are critical parts of it. Okay. The final thing that we're doing, will be new on Trailhead in about 30 days, is thinking about what are the leadership, because you talk about, we have this grassroots effort with the Ohana groups. We're focused on the data and hiring, but you want to make sure that day in and day out that the frontline managers are also behaving and creating an environment that actually feels inclusive, and that they're leading with equality. For example, like being an ally and being active in an Ohana group, that they're having those brave conversations and asking and listening and showing up and speaking up, that they're practicing inclusive meetings. And you think about how much of the culture of your company is played out in meetings, and how many times somebody who's being marginalized is interrupted, co-opted, they're not invited to the meeting, right? Their idea was a bad idea when they said it, and 3 minutes later someone else says that same idea and it's a great idea, right? How often does that happen? And that to cause people to reflect on those things and think about the idea of how you're taking some fraction of the resources of the business and not investing them in so bad outcomes for the people, bad outcomes for the shareholders, bad outcomes for the customers. Think about what time the meetings are. An in-person meeting at 7:30 in the morning, if you're the primary caretaker of a child, that's not a great time to have a meeting. An impromptu meeting, hey, let's just have a meeting at 6:15. Guess what? You can't leave your kids at school at 6:15 p.m. at night, right? So just doing those sorts of things, it makes it less inclusive. It makes it harder for anyone who's the primary caretaker of a child. I went through a season of my life where for 7 days, out of 14, I was the primary caretaker of 2 kids starting at the age of 3 and 4. And I can tell you how hard it is to navigate those things, how important it is to be in an environment where people are thoughtful and flexible and still allowing me at that time to do the best work of my career, even though I had these responsibilities and someone had a fever and was throwing up at school. Guess what? Meeting's over. Can't leave a kid throwing up at school. Those of you who don't have kids, newsflash, right? Meeting's over, see ya. And so, likewise, in how we apportion work, how we make assignments, how we assign quota, how we assign territory. If you're in sales, how we assign high visibility assignments. It's super important that those are done in a fair and balanced way, and that the process for promotions are transparent, and that finally we think about how we celebrate and bond. Now, come back to my own personal experience, this idea of, hey, it's 6 o'clock, let's just run down to the sports bar and have a drink, right? Like, 7-year-old, they go to bed at 8 o'clock, right? And running out impromptu, doing those sorts of things, is that bad to do all the time? No. To have that be the consistent routine for how you bond and celebrate, not inclusive, not great. Wouldn't be for me as a parent today. So just think about it. The things that you're doing, how inclusive they are of everyone from every walk of life, from what you do to when you do it, and versus having some kind of voluntary activity where you're going back and investing back in the community, at lunchtime, as another option. Those are all parts of building great places to work. Places where everyone is seen. Everyone feels valued. Everyone is heard. Nobody feels like they have to leave some fraction of their identity at the door for fear of judgment or discrimination. So why is that important? What does that look like? Let's take a listen in the words of some of our employees.
Can you tell just by looking at me?
Can you tell just by looking at me?
So can you tell by looking at me that I'm an Iraq War vet?
Would you guess that I am a pro bodybuilder?
I'm an avid college basketball fan.
I love Bruce Lee films.
I am half redneck.
I used to be a chubby kid.
Would you have guessed that I'm a swimmer?
That I'm Catholic? I did not learn how to speak English until I was in 2nd grade.
Just by looking at me, you wouldn't know that I was the first in my immediate family to graduate high school.
So would you guess that I'm undocumented and then that I got a degree from Haas Business School?
Would you assume
What many people assume is that I'm happy, but many people don't realize that I'm scared.
I'm afraid of being misunderstood.
We're all afraid of something. We're all insecure about something.
Yeah, I wake up every day with the fear of deportation.
Lots of us are just afraid of what we don't know.
Don't assume, ask what you don't know.
You don't know about Islam? Ask me questions. Won't offend me.
And if you ask me, I'm Filipino.
I'm Apache and Comanche.
I'm very much proud of my spirituality.
I am a she.
I am a he.
I'm straight.
I'm a lesbian.
I am a husband. I am trans.
I am a 3-time cancer survivor.
I'm Mexican Chinese. I'm gay.
I am a proud Muslim.
I am an ally.
I am an ally.
Not only am I an ally, I'm a champion.
My truth does not have to be someone else's truth, but they are still true.
So we're asking you to tell us who you are.
Be seen and be recognized.
Be part of a more diverse and more inclusive culture.
Help us move forward together.
Because together, we are Salesforce.
Juntos somos Salesforce.
We are Ohana.
And Salesforce welcomes all.
Can I hug you? Okay.
So Salesforce welcomes all. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for, because the idea that you're here on a Friday afternoon, investing your time, it says something. There's lots of ways to vote. You can vote with your feet, that you're here and you're listening. It says that you're committed to being a part of this journey to building a better industry, whatever industry you're in, a better society, and better companies, and better people, and better leaders for the future. So I want to thank you for your attention and for your participation in this journey to an age of equality. Thank you.